This is Meredith McCormick, Secretary of the Roger Sherman Building Committee. It's Tuesday, February 16th at 7 p.m. for our regular meeting.
All right. This is Chairman Eric Lang. The meeting is officially called to order. First item on the agenda is an update from Colliers on the certificate of occupancy and project closeout. Mark, do you want to can you provide the committee with an update?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Mark Schweitzer, Colliers. Building official and fire marshal was on site last Tuesday, February 2nd. Things went well. They have signed off. The report I got back is they signed off on the project. Diversity is still waiting for the official piece of paper, but they are expecting that. So CO is done. As far as the as-builts and closeout, the O&Ms and the as-builts, with the exception of the HVAC, have been transmitted to FPS. The one loan is the HVAC, which went to Diversity yesterday, and they should be submitting it to SPA for review today. This is just the red lines or the as-builts for the HVAC equipment and how they ran it. Other than that, within the last month and a half since we last met, the line striping got done in the parking lots. The as-built survey has been done. It has been submitted to DPW for sign-off with conservation. So that was sent to George K. this week. So he will have that in front of conservation for official sign-off. As far as the other items, well, the signage on the RTUs was a condition of the CO, and the fresh air intake next to the exhaust was a condition of the CO. So those have been satisfied. The flagging on the roof that was brought up was removed at the end of January. The ceiling tile, Joe still had, well, as of at January, he had 4 locations that ceiling tile needed to be replaced, and that took place. So that is signed off. Diversity did install a light on the stage, and when I say a light, it is a single bulb at the roof line. We do now have a PR that will go to Yankee for pricing for 4 LED, essentially the 1x4 LED lights that will be hung from the stage ceiling, and have a 3-way, two switches on either side of the stage to control it. So that will go to Yankee for pricing. I would send it to A&R, but they've been unresponsive to Diversity and to us, and I feel they'll be unresponsive if we send them a PR for additional work. So we have the lights on the stage. We still need to close out the time and material tickets for them. I would like to call them, with the committee's blessing, I'd like to call a meeting with Diversity and invite A&R and SPA and someone from the committee and FPS and resolve this ticket the issue with the tickets, and basically lock them in a room and let's come out with a decision. I'd like to schedule that early part of next week.
I mean, what is the issue with the tickets?
They submitted.
It should be. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. They submitted tickets. SPA questioned some of the items on the tickets. and A&R has failed to respond to those comments. Well, they responded basically saying that it was required and it was part of the change order work, but other than that, it has not been, substantiated that it was part of the work.
Dave, are you guys essentially saying that some of the hours in their tickets are contract work, not
correct?
Part of this change order?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Okay.
But I've reached out to Diversity, and they have reached out to A&R, and A&R, supposedly the guy was in the hospital in December, but it's now February, and we have not had this resolved. So I'd like to just invite them to a meeting. If they show, they show. If not, we'll decide. At the meeting, we'll decide what the final price of that is and submit it for them.
Okay.
Mark, what does A&R stand for?
That I don't know. It's the electrical sub out of Bridgeport.
Okay, that's fine.
The owner's name is Americo Glorio, so I believe the A is him. I'm not sure who the R is.
All right, thanks.
And other than that, I have 2 PCOs that will come up, but we will not be able to vote on them, but I can get some direction on them, and that'll be one of the topics of discussion at this meeting with Diversity. Do we want to discuss them now or wait till the approvals that we can't have?
Maybe we should just discuss them now because there won't really be motions made and such.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we might as well.
Well, the first one's pretty simple. For August 31st, Diversity had requested that we get Fuss and O'Neill, the abatement monitor, on site for the glove bag of the pipes above the stage. We did so. Fuss and O'Neill showed up at 8 a.m. Diversity was not ready for them. Diversity told them to come back after lunch. Fuss and O'Neill went away and came back after lunch, and they still were not ready. So Fuss and O'Neill has a charge in here for $950, I believe, for the day spent where they could not do the abatement monitoring. This was Fuss and O'Neill emailed me back in September stating that. I forwarded it directly to Diversity, and I just got Fuss and O'Neill's invoice and sent it to them this past week. So this is something that I think of. Gerald, correct me if I'm wrong, but since the town has the contract with Fuss and O'Neill, the town has to pay the invoice, but will need to back charge Diversity for it. So we will need to increase Fuss and O'Neill's PO to pay it, but then decrease Diversity's PO to essentially pay it. It's a zero sum, but it's just where the money's coming from. Is that correct, Gerald?
Yeah, I think that's probably the cleanest way. Is basically we would increase the PO to cover it, and then as you said, Mark, just deduct that amount from an invoice that Diversity that submits to the town.
And then, thank you, Gerald. Then the other PCO is for the tropical storm in August. The roofers came on site to protect the roof openings that for the RTUs. Originally it was to tarp them and all that, but they, from the pictures and from the description, they came in with the EDPM roofing and wood blocking and strapping and secured the openings, and there was no water that came in during the tropical storm. This PCO was reviewed by myself and SPA. There is merit to it. It's a total of $2,000, I believe.
$18.44.30.
Yep. Now, per contract, any claim that the contractor or subcontractor feels, they have to claim it within 21 days of the occurrence. We did not get this till November, so it could be rejected outright just because it was over the 21 days, but it does have merit. They did do the additional protection above and beyond the normal roof opening protection. So it has merit. That's why we are bringing it to the committee.
Mark, do you know when the subcontractor submitted this to Diversity? His invoice is not dated, which is why I ask. Well, there's other reasons why I ask, but
the date that the PCO was created was November 17th. So that's when Diversity got it into their system. No, I do not know when it was discussed with Diversity, if it was discussed with Diversity, till November.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, something like this, I would agree with you that it is a probably a justified and warranted change order in that it protected us from potentially significant water intrusion while we were doing the work on the roof. I also would agree with your assessment that this coming in 3 months after the fact is a little leaves a bad taste in my mouth. But I also, for this amount of money, and given the fact that we do have room in the budget, I don't want to stiff someone who helped us out in a pinch. But that's my take on it. Obviously, we can't vote on it tonight, but I'd welcome to hear any opinions from the rest of the committee members.
It's Meredith McCormick. I agree with you, Eric, and you could use your executive powers to approve this.
Oh, that's true. I guess I could do that, huh? Forgot about that.
Someone could join in. Who's Julie DeMarco?
Human Services Director. Is this the RTM committee meeting?
Oh, you're in a wrong meeting. This is the Roger Sherman Building Committee meeting.
Well, thank you. See ya.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, Meredith. I guess I do have the power to approve it. And why don't we go ahead and do that now so we can actually cross something off the list tonight. I guess just let the minutes reflect that I approve this change order under the powers afforded to me as the chairman of the committee. And then as far as the other change order goes, Mark, you just submitted an email, but did you receive any response to your email from Diversity acknowledging?
Neither one of them. Not the one sending it in September saying, this was, this is a diversity cost, or this one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Well, again, there's a lot of money left on the table here. I'm still surprised that Diversity is not acting with more of a sense of urgency to get that money released. But I think this would go into that final payment discussion.
Yep. Well, it's my speculation is it's not Diversity's money; it's the subs' money.
Mm-hmm.
Because knowing the owner and John and Nick, they would be, if it was Diversity's money involved, they would be pounding down the door, and they'd be able to get it. They'd be doing it. Just knowing from past history with them. But it must be the subs' money, and they can't get it out of the subs.
Yeah. You mean for this credit change order, for the Fuss and O'Neill one, the $920?
No, just to get reaction, get A&R not responding to ticket, the PCO comments, Save More not doing the as-built correctly, and not running around like their hair's on fire to get the as-built in.
All right. Well, I mean, all those guys should still be owed money as well, unless Diversity got out in front of them. So, all right. All right. Any other questions from the committee for Mark? All right. Not hearing any. Next item on the agenda is an update from Silver Petroselli on project closeout. Dave, anything to add to what we just heard from Mark? Dave, still with us?
He's still on.
You're on mute?
No, he's not on mute.
Okay. Well, I think the only question that I would have for David would be to expedite the review of these HVAC as-built so that we can close that loop and get that off their plate. All right, so moving along, item number 4, given the fact that we do not have a quorum this evening, we will not be able to act on approving of the minutes or change orders other than one I previously approved or invoices. Next item on the agenda is an update on the plaque, but given the fact that Patrice is not here, I think the only other person that would be able to speak to it would be Gerald. I don't know if you have any updates, Gerald, that you would want to share with the committee.
No, actually, I don't. I was actually I was out sick for like 3 weeks, so I'm trying to hook up with Patrice to go back through it. She tried to reach out to me, but I just haven't gotten back to reaching out to her.
Okay. Okay. So under so the next item, well, any other old business anyone on the committee would like to raise? All right. How about new business?
It's Meredith McCormick. I just want to let everyone know that Mr. Plitsis has resigned from our committee effective January 18th. I read that in the Board of Selectmen minutes. So you can take him off your distribution list.
All right. Thank you. And thank you for sharing that information. Glad we found out in a somewhat roundabout way, but I appreciate you sharing it with the committee, Meredith.
Luckily, I like to read, various town body minutes from time to time.
In your spare time. Okay. The only other new business that I would like to raise was, I think, just shortly before this meeting, Gerald, you had received confirmation from CHRO that diversity had satisfied all of their requirements to them and that they had no objections to us releasing that portion of the retainage. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. So I guess, hopefully by our next meeting, then we can have all of these remaining open items wrapped up and be able to close out diversity's contract as well as the project as a whole.
At this time.
Any other new business? Meredith or Brian?
No.
No? All right. Well, with that, I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
Do I have a
second.
second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Meredith. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Have a good night.
Everybody. Bye-bye.
Good night. Good night.
I do.
You have children.
Yeah, I absolutely do. Yeah. I mean, they got a lot more flexibility, generally speaking. So I think it's apparent, but one of the other topics that's on here, which I think is tied to some of the problems we encounter is when people make a tea time and don't show up for it. Yeah. And I think that is a much bigger problem. I think it's a big problem because I think there's, my kids will look at the tea sheet the day of because they never know what they're doing so many days in advance.
Right.
And they would, they could swing up there within an hour's notice, no problem whatsoever. But they won't go if they see the tea sheets all booked out.
Right. Yeah. Well, I would say, before we jump to that, because I think that is a big issue, let's just finish up on this. Does anybody else have any comments on the 7-day in advance? Anybody who's for it, against it? Do you feel like it's the right thing to do?
Jim, we discussed this a number of years ago, and one of the big concerns back then was just not wanting to miss out on a tea time. Therefore, they signed up with 3 X's or something like that. And, day before, they don't have a group, and so they drop out. I mean, we got to be very careful watching not just who's signing up, but who's dropping out.
Well, yeah, that's what Huey said, and we'll get to that in a second. But on the 7-day, any comments on the 7-day? Do you agree with that policy that they came up with over the winter?
I think it sounds like a good idea.
You do?
I mean, we were always struggling. So if you plan ahead, which is hard to do, but, at least you have the opportunity to do it.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, it seems like most are in agreement. Elizabeth, go ahead.
I was going to say, I agree with Bob that I feel like personally there could be a lot of, I need to secure this right now. Yeah. And there could be a lot of jockeying for position, a lot of pivoting at the very end. Which means if the children are going to come in or the kids members are going to come in on day 3, like I feel like 4 days prior, you need to know whether you want that tea time or not. So I feel like there could be some movement, not going so far as people canceling and all.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That's one of the things we talked about was there could be some manipulation here. There's no question about it. Jimmy mentioned it. The parent could sign up with guests, and then they could take themselves out at the 3-day mark, and their kids could hop on, a second later and take that tea time. That's absolutely a possibility. We're going to have to watch for that. I don't know how we can.
Doesn't Forties have an audit log, and you can probably see that all through Forties. Who created the tea time? Who changed the tea time, and when they changed it? I think it would be pretty easy to track.
Well, I think that's, and Jimmy, that's one thing I think we're going to have to do. To Huey's second point was on these no-shows, that's the big issue. I think we've all experienced that. Yeah. People sign up for these tea times, they forget to cancel, or they cancel 10 minutes before they're supposed to show up. We have to enforce that, and we have to have Gregor monitor that and give us a list every week of who didn't show up for their tea time. Because my guess is there's some habitual people in there who do it. They just hold tea times for every day, and then they decide the day of whether they're going to play or not. We've got to find a way to enforce that and track that, because I think that's a real issue. You've got, the tea sheet looks full, and there's probably 7 times that didn't get used during the day. Yeah. I'm guessing. That might not be true, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was.
No, it is true.
Yeah. Just one other thing to think about that might be helpful. We have a lot of new members coming in that are golfers. Some places do leave a tea time in the morning, 1 tea time for singles. The hope is that somebody who can't get in there either calls the golf shop or it's a way to get, we're thinking about the golfers today, but we need to maintain a membership as well. And you don't want someone saying, yeah, I joined Brooklawn, but I never got on the golf course. And I didn't know that many people. I didn't have a chance to get out there. And usually someone's sponsored and they know a bunch of people. So maybe it's not an issue here, but I know some clubs do leave between 9:30 and 10. I'm not saying between 8 and 9:30 when most people who go on and log on Thursday, but that's something to think about to allow those people to have a chance to play. Didn't we
do that? Well, I think that's a great idea. I thought we did it at one point in time. And kind of correlated to that, I think what's also somewhat problematic is people who are getting on Thursday at 9 o'clock and signing up as a single and precluding a foursome that's going in there to get a tee time. And I think if you held that time out, that's a very easy way to say we can accommodate you. We can accommodate you, maybe not, 7:30 in the morning.
Right. Yeah, you shouldn't be able to go on 4 tees and put yourself in as one person. You should have a game of 2 or 3, or go into that single slot. And put the single slot, if you look at 9:30 to 10, it's usually not that busy at all. That's not a very prime time. Or put it right at the last tee time, whatever it is. And that
I think that's a great idea, and I think we should publicize that, Lou. Make sure we communicate that. So listen, there's going to be 2 tee times that any singles can join, and it's going to be, we make it 9:37 and 9:45 or whatever every single week. Those are the singles tee times, and if you don't have a game and you just want to play and meet people, those are the times. I think that's a great idea.
Great idea. Couldn't you do 7:45, 8:45, and 9:45? Maybe it's a little bit of a chance to go. If someone's saying, "Well, I got to play first thing in the morning," you're holding 1 tee time at 7:45, 8:45, 9:45 for our, something like that.
You're more generous than me, Huey. You're really nice.
Hey, what do you think? Is that possible?
Absolutely, sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I grew up in the bag room at Weburn for about 5-6 years, and obviously wouldn't do this, but they did 7 to 8 a.m. was all walk-ups.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a great idea for 2 tee times. I know that a full hour would work at Brook Lawn, but that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. Sometimes some clubs have done twosomes from 7 to 7:30 too. There's a bunch of things you can do. So the fast player who wants to get done, maybe they have kids at home, they're a good golfer, they want to get out and they want to get done. Sometimes they'll let twosomes off for a very short window early in the morning. I know there's a couple of guys that play, like Ben Browning and his crew play early because they all have kids, but I'm saying you could do that. I'm not saying we have to decide this tonight, but those are things that are twosomes between 7 and 7:30. I don't know if I'd block off 3 tee times for singles. I'd start with maybe 1 or 2 and then see.
I agree.
I think guys will flip out. You'll get pushback if it's 7:45, 8:45, 9:45. It's the last 2 of the day.
Sure.
You won't get as much pushback, and then people will start, rather than trying the experiment, they'll push back and try to kill it on us on day one.
Yeah, I mean, when you push that button and you don't get what you need to play before 8:30 because you have a commitment or something at lunchtime, and you can't get that, and there's a tee time that's reserved there that's wide open that you can't get. It just infuriates you, I think. So, yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Hey, everybody.
Right, that's
sorry I'm late. Wanted to say hello.
Hey, Bill.
Yeah.
I think that's a fabulous idea. I like the one 9:45 and another one in the afternoon. I think it's great. One thing we have to be careful of, having twosomes go out early, they cannot be catching the grounds crew. They have to be able to maintain the golf course, and it's really hard for them to do that if they have someone who needs to be off the golf course at 10:30 in the morning.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's a secondary one. I don't think you have to do that, but I do like the single slot, and that'll be a nice welcome to new members too. I think we have 15 or 20 members coming in, so that'd be helpful for that.
Okay, good. Yeah, really good idea. I like that a lot. I think we'll definitely do that. Okay. Number 4 on the agenda, we talked about stricter enforcement of members that don't show up. I think this also goes for people who reserve tee times and they put in phony family members so that no one else can play with them. I do totally understand that people maybe just want to play with their wife, but when they put in family members to reserve the time, especially in COVID times, maybe before COVID it really wasn't that big of an issue, because people were fine playing with their wives and it was just a twosome. But when people are dying to get on the golf course and they can't get on and they find out that, people are reserving the whole tee time with, family members just to reserve the whole slot so no one signs up with them, I think this comes under that enforcement, Jimmy. Gregor giving us a list of when people don't show up, not just for the tee time in general, but also if they reserve the whole tee time and only 2 people showed up. I think we just have to watch that and maybe get a weekly report of some kind to be able to say, are there any habitual people here that we need to have conversations with?
I think that's also a cultural thing too, Jim, of,
the neat part I liked about Brooklawn was, hey, if you want to jump in a game, jump in a game. And so we should embrace that culture. And last summer I played with Elizabeth, Tom, and Charlie, and that was a blast. And, we need more of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and by the way, if somebody does want to play alone, they're playing with their wife who's just starting and she doesn't feel comfortable or whatever, we need to let people have the ability to do that. But COVID is a different time. When people can't get on the golf course the whole weekend because, somebody feels uncomfortable, it might be okay once we get past COVID and tee times are more available. Today, it's really not. We've got to be able to let people play golf. So, okay. Jimmy, you're okay with that in terms of being able to enforce that, you think, with Gregor?
Yes, absolutely. I'll add that with COVID in last summer, we did not ask people to, hey, do you want this person to join? We just kind of let it go, just simply because of the times we were in with COVID.
Yeah, sure. I understand that too. Yeah, you're right.
But in the past, I have asked. I've done my best to hook up people. There are some couples that will do whatever they can to play by themselves, and that's at the same time that's understandable, but not as busy as the golf course has become.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. A couple smaller things, guys. We talked about preview members and being eligible for board events. I talked to Jimmy about this. This to me is kind of a no-brainer. I don't want to taint the group. I want to hear your thoughts. But for somebody to come in here and play 4 months and then leave and their name's up on a board that's there forever, to me doesn't make a lot of sense. Is there another view that I'm missing that I'm not getting?
I agree. I agree totally. I don't think preview members need to be part of board events. This doesn't make any sense to me. So is it going to go away in a sense because the preview members, because we have so many people in the queue, and Bill knows this better than anyone, we have a bunch of people in the queue. How many preview members are we going to have? We used to have maybe 20 at peak. Will we have 5 this year? How big a deal is it, I guess? But I would agree not to have them included on board events. Let them join. Let that be a carrot for them to join. They want to. They're a good golfer. They want to play in board events. Then join full time.
Right.
Yeah, unless something happens over the next couple of months, I almost see that would probably be a wait list by the time we let them in. But if we do have any previews, it would be just a very small handful, if that.
Do previews have tee time restrictions?
They don't.
The only thing would be when we're recruiting the previews, we gotta let them know. We said in the past, you have full golf privileges. We've got to let them know there's maybe not full golf privileges. We can't sell a dishonest story.
Right. Well, that's the issue. In fact, I asked
on the board, but let them know ahead of time.
Yeah, I asked Bill Wallace about this about preview members, and he said the way they sell preview members is saying, listen, you get full golf privileges. And he thought it would be a deterrent to getting preview members by telling them you can't get prime time slot. Not about board events now, about having full access to the golf course at any time, including prime time on weekends. And he said we sold it as saying you have full golf privileges and you can play at any time you want, because he thought it would be more difficult to recruit preview members saying, listen, you can only play after 10:30 on weekends or something like that. I think the issue may go away to what Bill said, and that we might not even have preview members this year. So I think it might be a moot point. But
yeah, that makes sense. I heard some rumblings, like we had a bunch of previews last year, going back to like priority tee times, and like I don't know if I'm the one to say this, but it's like if a preview member is taking a priority tee time from like a full member, then I feel like that would be like a COVID thing. Maybe that changes when we don't have 30,000 rounds, but with COVID, it feels like that would be a way of just opening up some more tee times.
Yeah, no, I that's why I brought it up to Bill, Connor. I agree.
Yeah.
You see 3 tee times being taken up by preview members, and you can't get the time you want. You're kind of like, this doesn't seem fair.
Yeah.
So, but Bill,
it sounds like it's not an issue anymore. So
it doesn't sound like it will be. Bill, you agree that it's probably a moot point this year?
Probably. If you have some, like I said, it would be a few. I do think we got to think a little bit about the preview is exactly what that is, a preview. And the whole point of the preview is, you come and play golf with some other members at 8 in the morning. You enjoy the patio and the beer and a sandwich with everybody. And, the whole point of the preview is for them to experience the club the way they'll experience it when they're members. So if they can't play in prime time in the morning and they're coming in later, they never get that experience of whether it's ladies or men, but they never get that full experience.
Yeah, it's kind of
either it's a preview or it isn't a preview. It's a part-time membership. So we got to be a little careful on that. And I said that's just my feeling, but
Bill, aren't we?
Pretty hard to give someone a preview, but tell them they can't play on the Saturday morning and enjoy a beer with their friends after.
Right.
We're not talking about not letting them play in priority time. We're just saying they can't play in the board events.
Right. Someone else just brought up priority time.
On the year, I mean, they can still play in priority time. But
no, but that's what we just progressed to.
Or something like that.
Yeah, we just moved to the other about Connor brought up the fact of preview members playing in prime time, and is that fair? And there's both sides here. To Bill's point, it's almost a recruiting tool, right? I mean, we need money. We need initiation money. Those people, if they come in as a preview and they're frustrated that this wasn't a great experience for them, we're not getting their $50,000.
Hey, Jim,
that makes sense.
Charlie and I were on the membership committee when we came up with the preview. So why don't we tell you what the preview is all about? It's as much for them to experience the club and for us to experience them. Because it is a private club, and in the end, we're either going to decide to let them in or not let them in. So there's a balancing act here. I think Bill Shaw is right. I don't think it's going to be an issue this year. And quite frankly, the preview changes from year to year. So I think I agree with everybody saying that you shouldn't be on the board if you're a preview. I get that. I think eventually we're probably going to limit the amount of golf a preview has, because there were a couple that, quite frankly, they were a little excessive. It was COVID, but we've learned every year we do it, we learn a little bit more and we change it a little bit. So I wouldn't get hung up on it.
Yeah.
And it's probably a problem that's going away for the time being. So I wouldn't take the party times, but I'd say no board events. I mean, the other issue you have, it's related and it's a separate topic, but most clubs do not give social members 10 rounds a year. If you're not encouraging someone, because some guys only play 10, 12 rounds a year. So that's a separate issue, but I understand that they don't really use them that much anyway because they're social members for a reason. But that's a separate issue. But apparently Bill Wallace has told me that they barely use those rounds, so it's not been an issue so far. But you're never going to get a casual golfer to pay up, the $49,000 if he can play 10 rounds a year and be a social member. So most clubs, you can't even walk on the golf course if you're a social member. I think we're very generous with that, but that's a separate issue.
So how many preview members equal to a full-time family membership? One?
If they're previewing, a regular resident, they're paying the same amount. That's one. Yeah, they have the same FTEs as the membership they're previewing, whether they're previewing as a junior or as a regular resident. So it's
not the same because they don't have to come up with the $50,000 initiation or whatever it is. What do they have to come up with?
$6,000. $8,000.
Right, it's $6,000. Then they pay the regular dues. Actually, the dues are higher this year than what full-time members are paying.
They pay a full-time membership's dues, but Bill's right. It's going to be higher this year. I think it's $8,500 or something like that.
Right. And Bill, we've had pretty good success, Francis. We've had pretty good success with converting folks from preview to full members, right?
Very good.
87% last year.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. Okay, so again, we're talking about this. We think it's probably going to be a moot point, but going forward, I think we need to make sure that if we do have preview members, they're not eligible for board. I think we all agree on that one.
Jim, I think we just need to you should send a note to Scott Torello saying that the ops committee would like to make sure that the board of, previews are notified that the board event, they're not eligible for board events.
Yeah.
And then the membership committee will have a vote on that and, bring it up to the board.
Okay.
Well, one question on that. When you say board event, meaning the championship flight that gets posted on the board, or can they play in a flight?
Anything that's on a board.
Then they can't play in the member guest.
They can't play in the championship. They can't play in the Well, that's a good point. Can they? The board event of member guest is just the championship flight. Can they win a flight in the member guest?
Guys, you have guys who are on waiting lists that are full-time members that can't even get to the member guest. I don't see how a preview member needs to play in the member. There are guys that have been shut out year after year because of re-ups. How do you put a?
Well, that's a good point, Lou. Jimmy, have preview members even been able to play in the member guest up to this point?
Yeah. 3 or 4 years ago, when we had no wait list, we went to the preview members and offered it to them, and we did get one who he joined the club the next month because he had such a great time as a member.
So they're only able to play if the waiting list is exhausted, then, which is the way it should be.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
But is there a loophole too that they can play as a guest of a member?
Yeah.
That's
happened in the past
as well. Yes.
Yeah. I always thought there was an exception for the member guests. We said that they were like the one-day member guests during the week, that they could play in that, although that's not a board event. They've got to be very careful with the member guests because that's I think that's a big sales point for people to be able to offer.
Not to confuse the one day member guests were open to preview members, but they were also open to social members. Even at the time, the one day member guests that were held on Friday, that was one of their. It is listed in the membership, the social membership classification as far as what you get.
Yeah, and we typically don't sell out the 1 days, right, Jimmy? So
we are always pretty close.
Yeah. But we've never come up to a point where people couldn't get in because preview members were bringing guests to the member guest, right?
Correct.
Right. Okay. Okay, let's move on, guys. Push carts. Jimmy, you want to talk about the push cart policy and what we're doing to change that going forward?
Yes. So prior or pre-COVID, the push cart policy at Brooklawn was 2 o'clock. Club-owned carts only, meaning you would rent a push cart from the club. When COVID hit us last year, we had to think about ways to, the whole touching of things and all that. So we put the push cart policy aside. We allowed members own their personal use of their own push carts to come on board. And I think the membership appreciated that. And at any time, mostly because due to COVID, at one time early on, we didn't have caddies for a while and so forth. So a push cart was a viable option. So I think we have here in the notes, as you can say it's a compromise. So we'll not go back to 2 o'clock. We can offer 1 o'clock and go back to the policy as it was pre-COVID. You have to rent a push cart from the club.
How does everybody feel about that? Bill, as a GM, do you think that's the right thing to do?
I think what we're trying to do across the board at the club, and I think this relates to it, whether it's at the pool and tennis and everything else, is we're looking to start the season almost in a normal pre-COVID, and then make adjustments after that. If for some reason it looks like we're going to be in the same situation as last year, I think we can. As we did with the other items, we have items in our bullpen that we can kick in different rules and regulations, should activity need that. But if you want to be consistent across the board, we're trying to get back to normal. So,
yeah, and in many cases we can. On the tee sheet, I think we're assuming we're still in COVID times to get everybody on the golf course, but some of these other issues like pull carts, I think you're right. Let's try to get back to those so we don't lose. So we're not setting precedent here where people get too used to being able to bring their own pull carts, because obviously that's revenue to the club too, right? So we need to think about that.
Last year, if you look at the tee sheet, once the kids started going back to school, the tee sheet's pretty on weekends eased up a bit. And I think if you go to COVID before school spring, I think you're going to have some open tee sheets. I think it would be better to have regular golf before the summer vacation, and then if we have to go into the COVID situation like we did last year.
Well, I don't know what you mean, Bob.
Well, regular you could sign up for play priority time both days, Saturday and Sunday. And after the kids started going back to school, we had open times on priority times. If you look at the tee sheets on Saturday and Sunday, and I think you can have the way it normally was, Saturday and Sunday. Start out the year with that, and then when the kids go back to school, if we see we're running into problems, then we go to the only one day a weekend, one priority time a weekend.
I'm not sure I agree with that. I think we're going to start out this year, and people are going to have huge demand for the golf course again. I think you're going to have a lot of people working from home. I think you're going to have a lot of kids at home. They get out of school in early May. They're home. They're going to want to play. I'm not sure I agree. I would almost rather start stricter and free it up as we go forward and give them something, give the membership something that's more positive rather than to start positive and then 2 weeks in say, well, nope, we're taking it back. Now you can only do one day a week. I would rather start where we finished and then be able to give them a more favorable outcome going forward. I'm really worried about starting, open it up, you can play anytime you want, and then find out that, okay, 2 weeks in, sorry guys, we're pulling this back, the tee sheet's too full. We can always, giving them something that's more positive afterwards, I think it's going to, in my mind, and I'd like to open this up because I'm not sure everybody agrees with this, having something that's more positive to give them rather than starting positive and taking it away, to me just feels better as a member. Knowing we're trying to be careful, we're trying to make sure everybody gets access to the golf course, and if we find that it's really not an issue, then we can open it up and people say, great, now we're back to normal again. I'm really worried about assuming we're back to normal and then taking something away because I think people are going to react negatively to that. Just my 2 cents. I'd be curious how other people feel.
I totally agree. I think easing rules is better than adding rules.
Okay. Anybody else?
I agree. Easier to give good news than bad news to start. We don't know. We're flying blind right now.
Right. And I think that's kind of the communication, right, Brendan? It's kind of like, listen, we don't know how this is going to go. We're assuming that we're going to start the season in high demand. But we're going to look at this. We're going to track it every week, and if we feel like the tee sheet's opening up, then we're going to relax the rules, and you'll be able to go back to normal again. I just really worry about relaxing them right up front and then putting the hammer down. Because I think people are tired of getting pulled back all the time. That's all. So, and they're kind of used to having one tee time on the weekend from last year. So, we can go forward with that. And honestly, I would love 2 weeks or a month in to be able to say, okay, we're a little more freed up than we thought we were going to be. Go to it. You can play 4 times on a weekend if you want.
And presumably people could jump in if tee times are open, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think some of the other
kind of like last year, the day before.
Some of the other things we talked about, if we get people to be more conscientious about not canceling at the last moment. And we should be freeing up some times to begin with, so it should be, hopefully it's a better situation this year.
Yeah.
But I agree with what you're saying, Jim. Start conservatively and then open the spigot a bit.
Okay. Okay, let's move on. Caddies. This was I think I'd like to think we all support the caddy program to the hilt, right? That's one of the things that sets Brookline apart in my mind. Our strong caddy program, Gregor's done a great job, Tom's done a great job. Everybody who's had that caddy program has done a phenomenal job over the years. It's one of the pride. I think it's one of the sources of pride for Brookline. We need to keep that going. We do not want to water this down by having 5 groups walking or riding and walking on the prime time. We want to keep those caddies busy. We want to groom professional caddies. We want to get kids from schools in that can maybe qualify for the Evans Scholarship and help them out. So we initially talked about, instead of having the wording, you have to take a caddy, because personally, I kind of hesitate to mandate that people have to take a caddy from 7 o'clock to 10:30. You don't know their situations. We don't know if somebody just lost their job and they're in between jobs and I don't know. Personally, I have a problem saying you have to. But, Jimmy and I kind of talked about putting some very strong language in there that says, highly encouraged to take caddies during prime time. But I'm not stuck on this, guys. I'd be curious how people feel about this, because I think there are a lot of various opinions about, how strict we should be about taking caddies. What's everybody's thought on that?
I'll jump in. I'm incredibly passionate about the requirement. I get it, Jim. I think that's a sensitive thing to put a rule there. But again, going back to the culture of the club and some of the pros, I think that at a minimum, if you want to ride at 8 a.m. and there's 4 of you in a golf cart, you should take 4 caddies. If you fly on a weekend mornings, you should take a caddy. If you're going to plan priority times, there's a different expectation, there's a different way that you go about doing it, and so I would err on more and more towards, hey, you have to take a caddy.
Yeah, and by the way, I agree with that, Brendan. If they're taking carts or if they're walking, or they have 1 cart and 2 walkers, we should still say you have to take a 4 caddy.
Yeah.
But I think the other issue was, do we mandate that everybody walk with a caddy? 2 full caddies, 2 bags on each, with each caddy. Do we mandate that, or do we allow people, those who can walk? Now, I'm not talking about the cart folks. If we have 2 carts, I think we would mandate a 4 caddy. But how strict do we get on this one? How does everybody feel about how much we mandate not? And Jimmy, and Bill, I'll turn to you guys in terms of what you think has worked in the past and where you think we should go with this one.
Yeah, any club I've been at, it was mandatory before 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, whatever their time was. So I'm used to that. So I'm kind of.
So Bill, mandatory if they walked.
Yeah, if they walk, it was mandatory that if you had a foursome, you had to take a 4 caddy. If they were taking carts. But there's quite a few clubs that are very passionate about their caddy program.
Yeah.
And
we're one of them, I think. Yeah.
And so it's and I don't think there's a right or wrong. It's just that I have not seen it mandatory.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Jimmy.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think looking back at some of the things we've talked about this before at the golf committee level. I think putting the words in there, highly encouraged, is a good first step. Making them mandatory, I think that's up for discussion. Some clubs, Patterson, I know, I spoke to Chris Kennedy the other day. They are required, not caddy in every group, but you need to take a cart or a caddy before 1 o'clock. So the discussion more on the caddy program, the effect on the caddy program, was more directed to those carrying their own clubs at that time of the day. So I think you address that first. And it is a smaller number, the smallest number than it probably ever has been. So I think the club is heading in the right direction. But there's that word culture again. What is the culture of the club? What does this committee, where do we want to see this go as a group? And if it's a committee discussion to mandate caddies, then I'm fully supportive of that.
So how do we go ahead, Bill?
So that's an interesting policy what Patterson has.
Yeah, so they're allowed to take 2 carts. My understanding from what you said, Jimmy, they're allowed to take 2 carts and they don't need a caddy in that, correct?
Before 1 o'clock Sat weekends is my understanding, yes.
See, what we're saying is if you have 2 carts, you have to take a 4 caddy.
Most clubs are like that. You have to take a caddy or a carrying caddy during that prime time. Yes, most clubs in our area do have a mandate on a time restriction, as someone said, whether it's 1 o'clock on a Saturday and a Sunday.
And if you have a cart for 2 guys, no, but if you have a cart for 2 guys and you have a caddy carrying for the other 2, you don't need a 4 caddy for that single cart, right? Or do you?
Yeah, up for discussion. I would say as long as there's 1 caddy in each group, I think that's fine as far as mandating it.
Mm. So is that an easy way to enforce it possibly, guys, is to say every group needs to have a caddy, at least 1 caddy, a caddy or 4 caddy in every single group, even if all 4 take carts. I mean, I think that would be I think we definitely want to enforce that. But is that one way to say it, is that there has to be a caddy of some kind in every group?
Does that mean you could have one bag carrier and 3 guys carry their own bag on a Saturday morning?
That was my question.
Yeah, that's a good point, Bill. That's a good point. I don't like that either.
No, definitely not.
So do we tell people they can't carry their own bag on prime time?
I guess the question is how many guys carry their own bag in prime time? I could think of a couple. I mean, my club down here has caddies up till 1 p.m. every day. That's unrealistic, obviously, but can you have fire caddies during prime time? So the guy you described, Jimmy, who's out of work, is he probably playing during the week anyway, so he doesn't have to do it? You're not asking someone to do it every day.
Yeah, you can play later in the day, right? We're really talking about the prime time here, right?
We're talking about prime time, right? We're not saying go to 1 o'clock, but maybe you go to 10:30 or whatever it is, and then.
All right, I like that. I think that's a good solution, guys. It's a good compromise that for the prime time slots up to 10:30, you would have to take a caddy or a cart, and if you have 2 carts, then you need a 4 caddy.
Right. No one's carrying their own bag before 10:30 on Saturday. Right. I don't think that's too much. You're talking about a 6-hour window of golf for the entire week that you could play. So that person who's retired on a budget, I'm very sympathetic to that situation, but they just don't play it between 7.
Yeah, well, wait a minute. Let me tell you about those retired guys. A little moaning about this, but don't listen to it. They can all afford it. Listen to it.
I was just being politically correct, Charlie. I didn't want to.
Yeah, well, you don't have to be politically correct. I'm in that group, okay?
So Charlie, those groups, they would typically take 2 carts?
Yeah.
Yeah, and right now,
sometime I'll take a 4 caddy, sometime, but typically it's 2 carts.
And there's
no economic justification for that. I know these guys, okay? Forget it.
Yeah. Right. And Jim, the ancillary benefit to that is, and I love the Evans Scholarship, and I take a young caddy as much as I can, but there are probably 5 or 6 pro jocks. You might get a few more of those guys. And and a lot of guys I know a few guys tie those guys up. They're Troy's, Poloyan's guy or this one, that. And I get it. That's fine. But what I'm saying is, you want to support the Evans Scholarship as well, but you also want to have a balance of professional caddies for those people who want them sometimes.
Right.
We have fewer, in my 8 years of being at Brooklawn, there are fewer and fewer in my mind every year.
Yeah.
We're losing a lot of those guys. And you want a few, if they know they're going to get work every Saturday and Sunday and they're really good, you might attract a few more of those. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're still not going to deny an Evans scholar, a really hardworking kid. It's not to cut those kids out. But, the members' sons who caddy, then maybe there'll be less rounds for them. And there'll be more rounds for the Evans kids and for pro caddies type of thing.
Hey, Tom, as heading up this program, are you comfortable with what we just talked about of, if you have 2 carts, you have to take a 4 caddy. If you have 1 cart and a caddy in the others, the 1 caddy's fine. And there's no walking and carrying in prime time slots. Are you comfortable with that?
I think Tom had to step away.
Okay.
But I captured this all for him as his scribe.
Yeah, would you ask him, Elizabeth, and ask him to get back to me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, guys, is there any other thoughts there? Do we feel comfortable with that language about Caddies?
Jim, I think you're pushing it there. I think
you do.
I do, because now all of a sudden you're being penal to, Connor and his crowd. You're talking about a bunch of young guys that are, granted, they've got the best deal in the country, and they know it.
And you tell me all the time, and I do know it.
No, he's here right now giving back. So I think, highly encouraged is, pretty strong words for Brooklawn, historically. I'd love to see more people taking a caddy in the prime time. But I think you just got to be a little careful about that, because, as much as I'd like to see it, there are people that you're going to be encroaching on them.
So that's a good point. I didn't think about the younger members.
I could speak up to that, and I appreciate Francis speaking up on that. I'm kind of my behalf here, but no, I'd say, like, if you see me out in the mornings, I'm out in the morning a good amount. I'd like to say I use caddies half the time at least. Like, if I'm playing with a member, if I'm playing with Francis or Jim, if I'm playing with you and you're taking a caddy, I'll take a caddy, right? But if I'm playing with, like, the younger members, I think generally we also, like, kind of take the back half, if not the later tee times during priority. Like, generally, if I'm carrying my bag, I'm trying not to go at 7 a.m. Like, I know the look, right? And, like, I don't need to be taking it someone's 7 a.m. tee time. But it would be nice to take, like, a 9:30 and be able to walk, like, occasionally. I mean, obviously, to Francis' point, like, $80, $100 is different to me than most of you guys on the call. But, for me personally, I think I use my judgment well enough to, like, understand, like, I try to take caddies, I've had members' sons caddies all the time, like, and daughters to that matter. And, I think the caddy program is amazing, and I think it's huge, no doubt. Yeah. But I would say from a younger member's perspective, then you're going to have guys, purposely not going to prime time, and then that's going to shift the tee times even back further for members that are already, not in prime time, or not able to use prime time tee times. So I like highly encouraged for sure. And, like, again, like, I try to make an effort to take a caddy, and especially, like, I won't be the guy in the group to carry my bag when everybody else is taking a caddy. And I think I think everybody can use their judgment on when the right time is to use a caddy, but, occasionally it'd be nice to, carry your bag. And again, I don't know if there needs to be an hour restriction to it, but I do think, like, when I know I'm carrying my bag, I'm normally going to shift 9:30 or later, or 9 o'clock or later. I'm not going to take a 7:30 tee time and, carry my bag. So
yeah, this is a tough one for me, honestly. I struggle with this in that I want to support the caddy program to the hilt. I want to grow the caddy program to lose point. I want to get professional caddies in here, but I'm also sensitive to people who don't want to pay, $160 over the weekend, or can't pay $160 if they want to pay both days. The argument is, well, they don't have to play during prime time. They can play other time, and I get that too. So I don't know.
If I could mention one thing, so I think one of the interesting thing about the caddy discussions we've had over the winter is, our community outreach we're doing to try to get the young teenagers, involved early at 13 years old, right, and so on. And basically, every club should have, caddies and bag carriers and those in between. And they don't make as much. So I know, for instance, at Worcester and also up at Oak Ridge, we had a lot of our junior members would take the bag carriers. They basically wanted to carry the bag. It wasn't a lot of money. It was $25, $30, plus a little tip. So for the junior members, they had an opportunity to work with a young person who looked up to them, obviously. But as the discussions we had in the caddy program, this community outreach we're doing and trying to get them here, we shouldn't dive too deep if they're not going to have rounds to be able to get. So we want to be careful of getting them, and just like with the preview membership, promising something, and then they get here, next thing you know, 10:30, there's no caddies, and people are carrying their own bag after 10:30. So Yeah. And it's a tough balance. Every club's a little different. But
yeah, it really is tough.
But that's why you have different levels of caddies. So those that don't want the A caddy can take a bag carrier.
Yeah.
And
yeah, Elizabeth just made a point too in the chat about the stratification within caddies too. What you just said is that maybe that's the compromise solution. Is you have some of these younger kids who will, instead of costing $75 or $80, can we get them to take a bag for $45 or $50? Is that reasonable or not really?
In a heartbeat.
Really?
A 13-year-old young man,
yeah.
coming up being trained, absolutely.
Okay.
But Jim can answer that better than I can.
Yeah, so we've always had that C caddy designation in the 4Ts as far as the transportation drop-down menu. You can choose a C caddy. And we don't publish the rates for obvious reasons, but that C caddy, I believe, was at no more than $60, where now all the other caddies are making $80. So, if we really want to grow the caddy program, I kind of agree. You get that 13-year-old, and maybe the right price is 40 or 50, or we can leave it at 60.
Right. Hey, Connor, do you think with your group, would the $40, $45, $50 still encourage you to play in prime time with a bag carrier? I mean, you don't need anybody to read greens, and a bunch of the guys you play with don't need people to read greens. Does that solve the problem, or would you still want to carry, do you think?
That's a good question. I mean, obviously 40 is reasonable. I'm a little sensitive to this topic too. Not saying like I would love to take a caddy every day and pay them, a great amount of money, but I also, grew up caddying, right? So I understand like the difficulty of sometimes, waking up in the morning, and obviously if it's, one person carrying your bag and just, following you around and just literally carrying your bag, like maybe there's a chance to make it, $50 or whatever it is. I mean, I'd have to kind of, I don't want to speak for everybody. I would say that. I would like to talk. I think this is actually, it's a big topic, right? Like, I don't disagree with the sentiment, but I also would say that would discourage some play. I would assume. And
I probably did them injustice calling them bag carriers. They are trained completely, full trained caddy program. They get to your ball before you do. They rake your bunkers. They do everything. They just don't, someone like yourself don't need all that. So bag carrier, I apologize, was the wrong phrase, but they do much more than just carry your bag.
So I agree. I agree with that.
Yeah. So Jimmy and Bill, maybe we can go offline and talk to Tom, and come up with what we think that policy should be, and then we'll bring it back to the committee next month. Does that sound right?
Great.
Okay.
That's a great discussion.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Good. And then last thing, guys, because I do want to end on time. Jimmy, would you mind walking the group through the new rating we got from the CSGA? Most of you know that we wanted to re-rate our course. We thought the slope and the rating was too high. Our handicaps don't travel well. We haven't won an inner club in about 50 years, I don't think. We asked the CSGA to come in, take a look at the golf course. And Jimmy, do you have the numbers in front of you?
I do. So I'll just go over I'll mention if anybody wants to write this down and do your own self-analysis. The blue rating and slope right now, or going into this year, is 72.0136. Effective April 1st, it'll go down to 71.6, and the slope goes down to 132. Green tees 69.4, slope 132. Green tee will go down, rating and slope 68.9, 127. And the red tees 72.7, 126 going into this year, and will stay the same 72.7, and the slope goes up 128. So just a little caveat to that, we did not protest these numbers. We felt the committee that was established last summer when we knew the CSGA was going to come in and rate the course, and they did it in September. We did not officially protest, but we asked the CSGA to take a second look. And the gentleman's name on the CSGA is Bill Bigler. He was great during this whole process. He worked with us, and I think, and Jim was on this call. Jim Schneider was on this call. He can attest to that. I think he saw something wrong with the numbers. They actually went to the USGA with the numbers and saw potential. I don't want to say it's an error with the rating system, but there's something up that in the end they could not change. But because we had a second look, the slope did change after the preliminary numbers came in.
And Jimmy, how about from the black?
Black tees, 73.3, 138 going into this year. Goes down a little bit, 73.2 and 136. Slope goes down 2 points.
Right. So our slope was 138 black, 137 blue, 136. No, 137 combo, 136 blue, I believe. And
correct. I did not mention the combo courses. There's 10 ratings with the women's tees in there, so there's a lot to look at as far as numbers.
The summary, guys, is we didn't get what we really wanted, but we got a little bit. We tried to figure it out. It'll probably increase everybody's handicap by 1.
It will.
Which helps. Probably not the way we would have liked, but it's progress. One of the things that Bill said on the call was that he would be glad to look at the scores from this year, right, Jimmy? I mean, I think he said that we can revisit it next year after we have the data from this year's scores. Last year's scores were a little skewed because we had the foam, the swimmies in the holes. So the scores were kind of, I think, lower than they normally would be. So he promised that he would take a look at it again next year. I can't promise it's going to change. We tried. We got a little bit of concession there. Probably not as much as we would like, but, we got a little bit there. Okay? Before we close, a lot of you gave me some great ideas which we can cover next month. Some of those happen to do with the golf course, and I forwarded those on to Francis. Just so everybody knows, the golf committee is really charged with the operations and the events of golf. Francis's group, the Greens chairman and the Greens committee, it has to do with the golf course itself. So a couple of you had comments about green speed, about fescue, about garbage cans. I think a few of you talked about. I think I forwarded those. I'll go through the notes, Francis, to make sure you got all of the ones that had anything to do with the golf course.
Yep.
But I'll pass those on to you.
Great. You want me to take just 5 minutes and give everybody a quick update?
That would be great. That would be great if you would, yeah.
Okay, so let's start with the easy one. Garbage cans. Candidly, we tried a couple of things last year. Some things worked well. Some things didn't work as well. So you'll find that we're going to have a couple of different garbage cans out there this year in some strategic spots, particularly around the 11th tee box. So if that's a concern of anybody, I think we've got that resolved, and it will be different than it was historically. But believe it or not, things do change at Brooklawn, and they change a little bit every year. Some things work, some things don't. So that's one of the issues that we had, I think. Let's talk about the fescue and the rough. It's not fescue. It's long grass. It's very traditional to have long grass on a course our age. The thing that people don't realize is that it's a process, and it takes several years for it to come in properly. Actually, let me back up. There's a couple of ways of doing it. The simple, fast way of doing it is also the most expensive. That would require us to take out the dirt, take out the fertilizer that's been in the dirt, and you'd have a different type of grass in there, longer, thinner, wispier, easier to hit through. Okay? That's not what we're doing at Brooklawn. That's very costly, and that's not where we're spending our money. So we are letting the grass grow. You'll notice that in areas that have grass for a longer period of time, it's a little bit wispier. It's a little bit better. It takes 3 to 5 years to come in. So you'll have to bear with us as we do it in new spots like we are on the other side of Cornell Road. Why do we have? There was a question as to why do we have long grass. That predates me in the position that I'm in. It was part of the master plan, and that was what was decided on a few years back. Personally, I think it looks great in some places. Some places, it doesn't belong. But some other places where people are concerned about slow play, Jim Fatsy and Jim Schneider both know we're looking at those areas as making them penalty areas. And that was one of the suggestions that the USGA made last fall when they did their visit in October. If you haven't had a chance to read that report, it is on the website. So I encourage you to take a look at it. If you go to the golf drop-down menu and go all the way to the end, all the reports are there for the last couple of years, as well as the master plans that we have. So I think that addresses that, unless anybody has a specific question relative to that. Okay.
Guys, anybody have questions on the fescue? They're on the long grass. Sorry, long grass.
Jim, I'd just like to say something to Brad. I think you need to be complimented a great deal on that GoFundMe you did for that young man on Peter's crew this year. That turned into phenomenal success, which everybody in Brooklyn is proud of because it was a family affair. But you got that thing going, and I would just like to congratulate you and say you did a great job.
Thanks, Bob. I'd love to take all the credit, but I can't. It really was a community effort, and everybody, at the club was very supportive. It absolutely blew me away. I put that thing out on a Saturday night at 7:30, and by 11 o'clock we had hit our goal.
Yeah, well, every community needs a leader. You were the leader of that community, so congratulations.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it. But it really was a community effort, so thanks, everybody. So anybody have any questions relative to the long grass? I know, Lou, you're chomping at the bit, I think. You're on mute, Lou.
Sorry, there was already one on 11, and I know there was a lot of garbage on the course. People were carrying empty Gatorade bottles around, so it would be helpful to know where else we're going to put garbage cans. Most high-end clubs remove ball washers. And these garbage cans are green. You could tuck them in corners. I don't think they're too obtrusive, but I know a lot of guys struggled and there was garbage. No one wants to pick up garbage during COVID. Normally if I saw a wrapper, someone left a cookie wrapper or something, pick it up. So it would be helpful to understand how many more, because there was always one at 11, even during when we removed them. And as for fescue, I saw a video from 2010. I know it takes 3 to 5 years. You can go back. There's a video on YouTube when R.D. Williams was alive and Brad Worthington and everyone was on the board, and Peter Bly was sitting there and told us that it took a couple of years to get the fescue right in 2010. So we're here 11 years later. So, we're the mini Wingfoot. We've got double hazards when you have that fescue, especially down 7 between some of the holes there where you already have a tree blocking you, and then you go in the fescue. Why wouldn't we just grow the rough like Wingfoot? And we're a parkland course. I get the whole master plan. We don't have to do everything in the master plan. I know Ron Forst has given us great guidance and you guys have done a fantastic job. But I would really think about fescue, and if we can't spend the money to make it wispy, I don't understand the tall grass versus just growing rough. I would think it would be a reasonable cost to grow rough rather than to have fescue that's really not, well, it's tall grass. It's kind of weedy, and it's tough for Peter to maintain. So it's just something to think about. Wingfoot just grows the rough. That's penal, and that's probably easier to me.
Lou, I'm going to comment on the Wingfoot, and it's going to be heresy, and everybody's going to yell at me later on. But we're not Wingfoot. We are designed by the same guy, but we are very different. Our budgets are very different. Our personnel is different. Our topography is different. I hate to say it, but we're not Wingfoot, and we can aspire to be like a great club like Wingfoot, but the reality is we're different. Some of the grass that's coming in is replacing trees that have been taken out and are on the master plan to be taken out. And, quite frankly, last summer, everybody saw how devastated the trees got with the storm that we have. We've got a lot of other trees just like that are not far from coming down on their own. So, we've put grass in some of those areas that the trees have come down. So right now we do have a double penalty in some of those areas, but in some of those areas, those trees are scheduled to come down. So it's just a matter of time. And that's where the USGA suggested that we change the penalty, how we handle it. If you look at, say, 7, where you're cutting that corner that people talk about slow play and things like that, well, the reality is if you can't carry that, if you think of that as water, if you can't carry it, you wouldn't hit it over there, right? You'd avoid that hazard. So you've got people trying to make it, and they can't, and that's where they, get caught up in the grass. So I think it's there's a bunch of people that like the long grass. There's some people that don't like it, and that's part of the plan right now. Could it change? Yeah, it could, but as of right now, the plan is to move forward with it.
Hey, Francis, is it cheaper to maintain the long grass the way it is now versus making it rough?
Jim, the honest answer is I don't know definitively if one is cheaper or harder. I wouldn't tell you that the long grass is cheaper, especially in the development phases of it. I think it's probably just as difficult. So there isn't a savings if that's, the tack that we were looking at. So, listen, it could evolve, and some of these areas are going to take a different shape. Section 7 and 8, that was the first. This was the first year that we did it there.
I don't know about you guys. I think one of the areas that promotes slow play the most is 14. Somebody always hits that, that kind of big slice over to the right on 14. Can't find the ball, even with caddies sometimes, because you're on the left side. And I find it's still playing 14 than I think I do on any other hole.
That's why I think they were looking at, adjusting how we handle that area.
Oh, okay.
From a penalty standpoint. Okay. Jim Fatsy can answer that question better than I can. So as far as the green speeds for last year, candidly, we had a very unique year. We had a unique year from a amount of play that we had. We went from roughly the low 20,000 rounds a year to the low 30,000 rounds. Green speed has to do with maintenance as well as how many people we've got traipsing across it. We have to be cognizant of what's going on with the weather. Believe it or not, we had periods of a lot of water last spring, and periods of near drought where we didn't have a lot of water and we had a lot of play. Was it slower than historically? Yeah, it probably was at times. Was that protecting the greens? I would think partially yes, but it's also a maintenance issue, meaning there's only so much time that we can get on the courts to maintain it. So I think someone mentioned earlier about going out a little bit earlier with those twosome, and Bill mentioned catching up with the greens crew. Well, that's their one shot at the greens in a whole weekend. Okay, that first hour and a half in the morning between 6 a.m. and 7:30 that they have to touch that green. So believe it or not, the green grows all day long. So unless you're that first group out after it was cut and rolled, if you're later on in the day, it's going to be slower. It's going to be faster, or it's going to be longer. So are there ways to deal with that? Yep. The potential to change the way we maintain it. It's what they refer to as gap maintenance, where we take time out of the day and we come in and recut it. That's one of the things we're looking at to see if that's potential. But again, this is going to be a big year with the Open in the end of July. I think everybody's expecting a big surge in play in the April-May timeframe. We've got to be cognizant of what's going to go on in the course and how we're preparing for the Open in July and early August. So I'd love to tell you they're going to be faster than they were last year, but it's going to be a little bit of what the weather gives us and how much play we have.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's. I think sometimes, you know, people look at it and say, well, you know, you're not going to get them the way you do in October and June. I think if there's a way that we can get them even just a touch faster, I don't think it's slow or fast. There must be a way where we can get them just a little fast. Because I have noticed, I thought this year they were slower than, I've been here 24 years. I don't remember them being
Honestly, I can't tell you you're right or wrong on that. I can just tell you that we had a lot more rounds. We had a lot less time on the golf course. We're looking at potentially getting more folks in on the maintenance crew. We're looking at the gap maintenance. We're looking at taking time out of, taking tee times out of the day to do this stuff. So there's going to be a sacrifice somewhere. It's either going to be we got to throw more money at it, more labor at it, or we have to, live with.
I would, and by the way, Francis, I would absolutely support, in board meetings or anything like that about maybe the maintenance issue. And can we get Peter, 2 or 3 of our staff members to help do it? I would absolutely support you. So let me know.
Yeah, I will, but everybody on the call has to understand it's not just money. There's money, there's time, there's weather, and there's the amount of people out there. Just think about it. We had 10,000 more rounds in 2020 walking across every single green throughout the season. That's 10,000, that's like a third more that we had, or 50% more. So you have to balance that. Now, can other clubs do it? Yeah. Can we do it differently? Yeah. We're looking at other options.
I think that's all anybody's asking is just for Peter to think about. Okay, if our goal is to keep them up a little bit. What is this? I would throw back at him and say, Peter, you tell us how we do this. Tell us how. We're not looking to get them at 12. All year round. There's no way. But can we get them back to where they were? That's
where they were when.
Even 3 years ago, they were faster than. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure. 30,000 rounds means something. But when you're playing at 8 o'clock every Saturday, you're one of the first ones out, and they're slower than they have been years past. I think we just want to ask Peter, what can we do to do? What do you need to do to speed up a little? And there might be some months that weather-wise, you have no choice. Like totally.
All right. Well,
and there might be times when he's protecting it for the women's open and that kind of stuff. But generally speaking, I'd love to know what his ideas would be. Is it money? Is it maintenance staff? Is it, like you said, maybe doing something midday, and doing something at the greens, maybe cutting them another time during the day? I don't know what it is, but he's the expert. I mean, when you talk to Peter, he could talk circles around us in terms of grass. He knows what he's doing. I'm sure he would probably he would be the one to give us ideas more so than anything else. But I think it's more just for him to understand that this is an issue out there, because I don't think it's just me, guys. I don't mean to speak for the golf committee. I'm just speaking for myself. I've heard other people say the same thing, though, that we're not looking for them to be October speeds, just a little better than they were last year. That's all.
I can keep telling you what I just told you, but I think you got it.
Yeah. Okay. Guys, any other comments?
Jim, if I can just add, I can't go by a golf committee meeting without talking a little bit about junior golf. So I know Mr. Lake is still on the call, and Dan is maybe still on the call, but we're going to ramp up the junior program with a spring break camp followed by after school spring sessions, and then by the time July rolls around, we'll be kicking into high gear with the clinics and the playing clinics. So I will reach out to Mr. Lake and Dan just to kind of start a conversation, see if we can do anything different. The schedule is pretty much in place, But, we're looking to try to improve it each and every year. So I appreciate their feedback last year. I think they did a great job. And now that this is the second go-around for Mr. Lake and Mr. Gomez, I think they'll be able to add more input and help myself and the pros get to a better level of junior golf. Thank you, everybody.
Sounds good, Jim.
Thanks, Jimmy. I had it on my list, and I totally overlooked it. Sorry, Dave. Sorry, Dan. Okay.
No, that's good. That sounds good. I think, obviously with the junior PGA kids, hopefully we can play other clubs this year. The big thing is always getting them on the course as much as we can, but obviously with, the number of rounds and the pressure there, that's always going to be a tough one. So maybe we can try to be as innovative in terms of the timing of when they get out there late on Sundays and things like that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
We are planning, this is a good one, I love this one, a inter-club with the Country Club of Fairfield, Wingfoot, and Stanwich, just those 4 clubs and us. That'll be a good one for our kids, and I think we'll be able to do it this year, have a little travel team. Let's keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Am I eligible?
And Ellen and Meredith and Elizabeth will talk about, I know there's a really good idea about the mixed member. Can we talk about that next month? Are you okay with that?
Yep.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, no, I thought that was a great idea. So we can talk about that next month. I wasn't going to go around to every single unit just to kind of go through the immediate things we needed to cover. But guys, I apologize. I totally failed in the timing here. I came into this thinking this is no way this is lasting longer than 8:30. I promise you it's not lasting longer than 8:30. And here we are at 8:50, and I'm sorry. So, but thanks for hanging in there. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, thanks, Jim.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jim.
Take care.
Bye now.